What happens when a woman gambles her pride on a reckless vow, and the devil himself walks through the gate to collect? Tonight, you'll witness a tactical genius pushed to her breaking point, a warlord who never forgives, and a secret that could shatter an empire. This is a story of power, survival, and a love that refused to die in the wilderness. Stay until the end to see how one moment of defiance rewrites 6 years of silence. If you're watching from anywhere in the world, drop your city in the comments. I want to know who's brave enough to follow this journey to its bloody conclusion. And hit that like button if you believe some vows are worth the chaos they create. Let's begin. The great hall of Ashford Court smelled like imported wine and expensive cruelty. Lena Whitmore stood with her back against a marble pillar, watching the nobles circle each other like sharks in silk. She'd been standing there for an hour, maybe longer. Time moved differently when you were being ignored on purpose. "She's here again." The voice came from somewhere to her left. Lady Marianne Holt, daughter of a mining baron, draped in emeralds that probably cost more than Lena's annual salary. "I don't know why she bothers. No one's going to dance with her." Laughter rippled through the cluster of women nearby. Polite, controlled. The kind of laughter that had teeth. Lena didn't turn her head. She'd learned years ago that reacting was the same as losing. "She's not here to dance," another voice chimed in. That was Lord Garrett's wife, a woman whose name Lena could never remember because she changed husbands every few seasons. "She's here because the Crown still thinks tacticians belong in strategy rooms, even when they're, well, you know." "Women?" Marianne supplied sweetly. "Unmarried women," the wife corrected. "There's a difference." More laughter. Lena kept her expression neutral. She'd written the defense plan that saved the southern ports last winter. She'd negotiated the grain treaty that kept half the kingdom from starving during the drought. She'd done it all from a cramped office with bad lighting and worse coffee, while men twice her age took credit in rooms like this one. And still, they looked at her like she was a stain on the upholstery. "Do you think she's waiting for someone?" Marianne again, louder now. She wanted Lena to hear. "Perhaps she believes a prince will arrive and sweep her off to some grand destiny. More likely she'll die alone in that dusty archive, buried under maps no one reads." The group dissolved into giggles. Lena's fingers tightened around the stem of her untouched wineglass. She should leave. She'd done her duty, shown her face, represented the tactical division, proved she wasn't hiding. That was enough. But leaving now would look like retreat, and Lena Whitmore did not retreat. "Excuse me." A young man appeared at her elbow, one of the junior clerks from the Ministry of Trade. His face was flushed, probably from the heat or the wine or both. "Miss Whitmore, I was wondering if you might—" "She doesn't dance," Marianne called out, her voice bright and cutting. "Do you, Lena? I've never seen you take the floor, not once in all these years." The clerk froze. Lena met Marianne's eyes across the room. The other woman smiled, slow and satisfied, like a cat that had cornered something small. "It's not that I don't dance," Lena said quietly. Her voice didn't carry far, but in the sudden silence, it didn't need to. "It's that I don't waste time on men who can't keep up." The clerk's flush deepened. He mumbled something apologetic and disappeared into the crowd. Marianne's smile widened. How tragic! All that brilliance, and no one to share it with. "Tell me, Lena, do you ever regret being so uncompromising? So sharp? Men don't like sharp women. They like soft ones, gentle ones, claimed ones," someone added. "Exactly." Marianne tilted her head, studying Lena like a puzzle she'd already solved. "You must be lonely." Lena should have walked away. She should have smiled politely, set down her glass, and left the hall with her dignity intact. But 6 years of swallowed words were sitting in her throat like broken glass, and suddenly she was so tired of bleeding quietly. "You want to know if I'm lonely?" Lena heard herself say. Her voice was steady, calm, the same tone she used when presenting battle strategies to rooms full of generals. "Fine. Let's make it interesting." Marianne blinked. "I beg your pardon?" "I'll make a vow," Lena continued. The words were coming out now, unstoppable, reckless. "Right here, in front of all of you." The conversation around them died in waves, spreading outward like ripples from a stone thrown into still water. Heads turned, eyes sharpened. A vow? Marianne's smile turned predatory. How delightful. Do tell. Lena set her wineglass down on the pillar's ledge. Her hand didn't shake. That surprised her. The next man who walks through that gate, she pointed toward the main entrance, the massive double doors that opened onto the courtyard. I will kiss him, publicly, right here in this hall. The silence that followed was absolute. Then someone laughed. A single bark of disbelief that triggered a cascade of reactions, gasps, whispers, shocked giggles. You can't be serious, Marianne said, but her eyes were gleaming. This was better than she'd hoped for. A spectacle. A humiliation in the making. I'm perfectly serious. Lena's heart was pounding now, but her voice remained level. Any man. Doesn't matter who. First through the gate. What if it's a servant? Someone called out. Then I'll kiss a servant. What if it's Lord Pemberton? That got a bigger laugh. Lord Pemberton was 73 and smelled like mothballs. Then I'll kiss Lord Pemberton. The crowd was growing now, drawn by the commotion. Nobility loved nothing more than watching someone destroy themselves in real time. This is absurd, Marianne said, but she was already moving closer, positioning herself for the best view. You're going to regret this. Maybe, Lena said, but at least I won't be boring. The doors were closed. They'd been closed all evening. The formal entrance wasn't in use during the gathering. Guests had been arriving through the side halls for hours, but protocols were protocols, and Ashford Court followed protocols like religion. At precisely 9 o'clock, the doors would open for the final arrivals. Late guests, stragglers, anyone who'd been delayed by travel or business or bad weather. Lena checked the clock on the far wall. 8:57. This is going to be entertaining, someone murmured. Do you think she'll actually do it? She has to. She made a vow. Poor thing, she's finally lost her mind. Lena ignored them all. She kept her eyes on the doors. 3 minutes. Her pulse was hammering in her ears now, drowning out the whispers. What the hell had she just done? This wasn't strategy. This wasn't calculated. This was, wait! Marianne's voice cut through the noise, sharp with sudden realization. Wait, who's even expected tonight? Who's still scheduled to arrive? No one answered. 8:58. The crowd shifted, forming a loose semicircle around Lena and the entrance. Anticipation hummed in the air, electric and hungry. Maybe no one will come, someone said hopefully. Maybe she'll be spared. Or maybe she'll have to stand there all night waiting, Marianne countered. Either way, it's humiliating. 8:59. Lena's hands were shaking now. She clasped them behind her back where no one could see. She'd made worse gambles, riskier calls. She'd sent soldiers into battle based on incomplete intelligence and weather predictions. She'd bet entire campaigns on single variables. But this wasn't war. This was personal. And she had no idea what she'd just set in motion. The clock struck 9. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then, from somewhere beyond the doors came the sound of hoofbeats, heavy, purposeful, the kind of sound that announced arrivals that mattered. The crowd stirred. Someone's coming. Oh God, she's really going to have to do it. Who is it? The doors swung open. Cold air rushed in, carrying the smell of horse sweat and autumn rain. A figure stood silhouetted against the torchlight from the courtyard. Tall, broad-shouldered, dressed in traveling clothes that were too plain for nobility and too fine for common folk. He stepped into the light, and Lena's entire world stopped. No, it couldn't be. Duke Rylan Voss, the herald announced, his voice echoing through the sudden, suffocating silence. Lord of the Northern Marches, Warden of the Frontier. Rylan. 6 years. 6 years since she'd seen that face. 6 years since she'd heard that name spoken in her presence. 6 years since she'd run from everything he represented and disappeared into the kind of obscurity where women like her went to survive. He looked exactly the same. No, that was wrong. He looked harder, older. There were lines around his eyes that hadn't been there before, and his hair was longer, tied back in a way that suggested function over fashion. He'd always been intimidating, but now there was something else in the set of his shoulders, the way he held himself. Authority. The kind that came from years of making life and death decisions and living with the consequences. He scanned the room with the methodical precision of a predator assessing terrain. Then his eyes found hers, and locked. Recognition hit like a physical blow. Lena saw it in the way his expression shifted, subtle, barely perceptible, but she'd spent enough time reading that face to know every micro-expression. Surprise, confusion, then something darker, calculation. Did he... Marianne's voice was barely a whisper. Did he hear? The Duke's lips curved into something that wasn't quite a smile. He'd heard. Of course he'd heard. The gates had been open. The courtyard carried sound like an echo chamber. He'd probably caught every word of her reckless vow while dismounting his horse. Lena couldn't move, couldn't breathe, couldn't think past the roaring in her ears and the sick certainty that she'd just destroyed everything she'd carefully built over 6 years of silence. Relan took a step forward, then another. The crowd parted around him like water around stone. No one spoke. No one dared. Miss Whitmore. His voice was exactly as she remembered, low, controlled, with an edge that suggested violence held on a very short leash. It's been a long time. Every eye in the hall was on them now. Lena forced herself to meet his gaze. Your Grace. I believe, Ryland said quietly, you made a vow. Her throat closed. I did. And I am the first man through the gate. You are. He stopped directly in front of her, close enough that she could smell leather and cold air, and something uniquely him that memory had failed to preserve. Then I claim what's owed, he said. Before she could respond, before she could think, his hand came up to cup the back of her head, fingers threading into her hair with a familiarity that made her knees weak. And he kissed her. Not gently, not chastely. He kissed her like he was reclaiming something that had been stolen from him, like he was making a point to every person in that hall, like 6 years of silence had just been declared null and void by executive order. Lena's hands came up instinctively, to push him away or pull him closer. She didn't know. Her fingers gripped the front of his coat, and the room disappeared into a singular point of contact, of heat and memory, and everything she'd tried so hard to forget. When he finally pulled back, the hall was dead silent. Ryland's eyes searched hers, cold and assessing. Interesting way to spend an evening, he murmured, low enough that only she could hear. Making vows you can't control. Then he stepped back, turning to face the crowd with the casual confidence of a man who'd just won a battle without drawing a weapon. My apologies for the disruption, he said, his voice carrying effortlessly across the hall. Long journey, I'm sure you'll all understand. No one answered. He looked back at Lena, and for just a moment something flickered in his expression. A question, a warning, a promise. We should talk, he said quietly. Soon. Then he walked past her, deeper into the hall, leaving her standing there with her heart pounding and her carefully constructed world crumbling around her feet, because Ryland Voss didn't make requests, and he sure as hell didn't forget. The rest of the evening passed in a blur. Lena barely remembered leaving the hall. Someone, she thought it might have been the junior clerk from earlier, had pressed a glass of water into her hands and steered her toward a side corridor. She'd ended up in one of the smaller sitting rooms, the kind reserved for guests who needed a moment away from the chaos. She was still there an hour later, staring at the wall. The door opened. Lena didn't look up. If you're here to gloat, Marianne, save it. Not Marianne. That voice made her spine straighten. Ryland closed the door behind him and leaned against it, arms crossed. He'd discarded his traveling coat, and in the lamplight he looked simultaneously younger and infinitely more dangerous. You ran, he said without preamble. Lena's fingers tightened around the empty water glass. I left. You vanished, in the middle of the night. No note, no explanation, just gone. I had my reasons. I'm sure you did. His tone was conversational, almost pleasant. That was worse than anger. Want to share them? No. Lena. Don't. The word came out sharper than she intended. Don't do that. Don't say my name like you have any right to demand answers after 6 years. I have every right. He pushed off the door, moving closer. You were mine. I was never yours. That's not how I remember it. Heat flooded her face. Memory is unreliable. Is it? He stopped a few feet away, studying her with the same intensity he'd used on battlefields. Because I remember quite clearly every conversation, every argument, every time you looked at me like I was the only solid thing in your world. Stop. Every time you fell asleep in my study because you'd been working on supply routes for 16 hours straight and refused to admit you were human. Rylan. Every time you told me the North needed me more than you did, even though we both knew that was a lie. Lena stood abruptly, the glass clattering onto the side table. What do you want? An apology? An explanation? A convenient story that makes you feel better about ancient history? I want, he said quietly, to know why. The simple honesty in those words hit harder than accusations would have. Lena turned away, facing the window. Outside, the courtyard was empty now, torches burning low. It doesn't matter. It matters to me. You moved on. You're the warden of the frontier now. You have responsibilities that don't. His voice went cold. Don't tell me about my responsibilities. You're the one who disappeared. I had to. Why? Because I was pregnant. Because your mother made it very clear that a tactician with no family name and no fortune would never be acceptable. Because I couldn't watch you choose duty over me, even though I understood it. Because I loved you too much to let you destroy your future for someone like me. The words burned in her throat, but she couldn't say them. Not now. Not when she'd spent 6 years building a life that didn't include him. Not when their daughter was sleeping safely in a cottage 3 days' ride from here, hidden away where no one would ever connect her to the Duke of the Northern Marches. I can't do this, Lena said finally. I can't. We can't. It's been too long. 6 years, Rylan agreed. 2 months, 17 days. Her breath caught. Did you think I stopped counting? He moved closer, and she could feel the heat of him at her back. Did you think I just forgot? I hoped you would. Well, his laugh was bitter. Hope's a funny thing. Silence stretched between them. There's someone else, Lena tried, desperate now. I've built a life. I have commitments, responsibilities of my own. Like what? The question was sharp. You still work for the crown. You still live alone. You still avoid every social function unless it's mandatory. He paused. Unless I'm missing something. You're missing everything. It's complicated, she whispered. Then simplify it. I can't. Can't or won't. Before she could answer, the door burst open. A young messenger stood in the doorway, breathless and wide-eyed. Miss Whitmore, there's been a message from the Westbrook estate. They said it's urgent. Something about... He glanced nervously at Rylan, clearly aware he was interrupting something. They said to tell you your ward is missing. The floor dropped out from under Lena's world. What? Her voice came out strangled. The child, the messenger continued, oblivious to the way all the blood had just drained from her face. The girl you sponsor. She wandered off from the estate grounds sometime this afternoon. They've been searching since sunset, but there's no sign of her, and with the forest nearby... Lena was already moving. She pushed past Rylan, past the messenger, into the corridor. Her mind was racing, calculating distances, terrain, worst-case scenarios. Emma, her daughter. 5 years old and fearless and absolutely incapable of understanding that forests at night were dangerous. Behind her, she heard Rylan's voice, sharp with command. Where exactly is this estate? 3 days north by road, Your Grace. The Westbrook property borders the Thornwood Forest. A pause. Then footsteps, rapid and purposeful. I'm coming with you, Rylan said, catching up to Lena in 3 strides. She didn't slow down. No. That wasn't a request. I don't care. This isn't your concern. You're my concern. He grabbed her arm, spinning her to face him. You've been my concern for 6 years, whether you like it or not. And if you think I'm letting you ride north alone in the middle of the night, chasing a missing child, you've lost your mind. Lena yanked her arm free. You don't understand? Then explain it to me. I can't. Why not? Because she's yours. The words exploded out of her before she could stop them. The child. Emma. She's... Her voice broke. She's yours. Ours. And if something happens to her... Rylan went absolutely still. In the lamplight of the corridor, Lena watched comprehension dawn across his face. Shock. Disbelief. Then something harder to read. What did you just say? His voice was barely above a whisper. Lena's hands were shaking so hard she had to clench them into fists. I was pregnant when I left. I didn't know until after, and by then it was too late to… I couldn't… You had my child. Not a question, a statement, flat and dangerous. And you didn't tell me. I couldn't. You could have sent a message, a letter, anything. Your mother made it very clear. My mother… Understanding and fury warred in his expression. My mother knew. She knew I was leaving. She encouraged it, suggested it would be better for everyone if I disappeared quietly. Lena's voice was steady now, past the point of emotion. She was right. You needed to focus on the North, on building your position, not on my own child, on a mistake that would have complicated everything. The slap of those words hung in the air between them. Reeland's jaw tightened. Is that what she is to you? A complication? No. Lena's voice cracked. No, she's everything. She's the only thing that matters. And right now she's missing, and I need to find her, and I don't have time for this conversation. She turned and ran. This time Reeland didn't try to stop her, but when she reached the stables, he was already there, saddling a horse with quick, efficient movements that spoke of years on the frontier. I meant what I said, he told her without looking up. I'm coming with you. Rylan, we'll talk about the rest later. His voice was ice. Right now we find her, together. Argue with me again, and I'll tie you to that saddle. Lena stared at him. Then she grabbed her own mount's reins and swung into the saddle without another word. They rode north into the darkness, side by side, with 6 years of silence and one terrified child waiting somewhere in the wilderness ahead. And for the first time in a very long time, Lena Whitmore prayed. Not for herself. For the daughter who had her mother's stubbornness and her father's fearless eyes, wandering alone in a forest that didn't forgive mistakes. The road north was hell. 3 days by carriage became 18 hours of brutal riding when you didn't care about killing the horses. Lena pushed her mount harder than she'd ever pushed anything, and beside her, Rylan matched her pace without comment. They stopped twice, once to water the animals at a creek, once to switch to fresh horses at a way station where the keeper took one look at the Duke's face and asked no questions. Dawn broke gray and cold as they approached Westbrook Estate. The place looked haunted in the early light. Main house dark, grounds empty. A single lantern burning in what Lena knew was the groundskeeper's cottage. She was off her horse before it fully stopped, boots hitting mud. Miss Whitmore! The groundskeeper, an older woman named Margaret, emerged from the cottage, her face drawn with exhaustion and fear. Thank God! We've been searching all night, but the forest is too dense and… She stopped short, seeing Rylan. Your Grace. Where was she last seen? Lena's voice came out flat. Professional. The same tone she used when analyzing casualty reports. The East Garden, near the gate that leads to the forest path. Margaret twisted her apron between her hands. She was playing with the cat. I looked away for maybe 5 minutes, and when I turned back, she was gone. The gate was open. That gate is supposed to stay locked, Lena said. I know. I don't know how it opened. Maybe the latch was faulty. Maybe she figured out how to work it herself. She's clever, that one. Too clever. Emma had inherited both parents' tendency to solve problems through direct action rather than asking for help. Lena started toward the East Garden. Behind her, she heard Rylan speaking quietly to Margaret. How many searchers do you have? Just me and my husband, Your Grace, and the cook's boy, but he's only 12. We sent word to the village, but it'll be hours before anyone… Get them together. I want to know every path, every trail, every animal track within 2 miles of that gate. Yes, Your Grace. Lena reached the garden. The gate stood open, swinging slightly in the wind. Beyond it, the forest waited, dense, dark, and completely indifferent to human panic. She knelt beside the opening, studying the ground. Mud, fresh enough that the rain from 2 nights ago hadn't completely washed it away. Small footprints, barely visible, child-sized, leading into the trees. She went that way. Rieland's voice came from directly behind her. Lena didn't turn around. I can see that. How long has it been? 14 hours, maybe 15. A child could cover a lot of ground in 15 hours if she was scared and running, or she could barely move at all if she was hurt. Lena refused to think about the third option. We need to move fast, Rieland said, before the trail gets any colder. I know. Lena. He waited until she looked at him. We'll find her. She wanted to believe that, wanted it so badly her chest ached, but she'd spent too many years calculating probabilities. She knew the statistics on missing children in wilderness terrain. She knew how quickly hypothermia could set in, how easy it was to get disoriented, how many things could go wrong. We need to go, she said, instead of answering. They entered the forest together. The trees closed in almost immediately, blocking out most of the gray morning light. The path, barely deserving of the name, twisted between massive trunks and over roots that seemed designed to catch boots. Every few yards, Lena stopped to check for signs. A broken branch, disturbed leaves, anything that suggested passage. There. Rieland pointed to a small scrap of fabric caught on a thorn bush. Blue. The same color as the dress Emma had been wearing in the last letter Margaret sent. Lena's throat tightened. She grabbed the fabric, tucking it into her pocket like a talisman. They kept moving. An hour passed, then 2. The forest changed around them, less managed, wilder. This wasn't the kind of woods where nobility went hunting with trained dogs and servants. This was the real thing. Unforgiving, ancient, the kind of place where people got lost and stayed lost. Hold. Rieland stopped abruptly, one hand going up. Lena froze. He was staring at something off the path. She followed his gaze and saw it. Freshly disturbed earth. Something had been digging. Recently. Animal? She whispered. Maybe. He moved closer, crouching down to examine the dirt. Or maybe someone trying to make a shelter. Hope flared in Lena's chest. Emma had watched Lena work on survival manuals for the northern campaigns. She'd seen the diagrams, asked questions about how soldiers stayed warm in hostile territory. Had she remembered? Emma! Lena's voice rang out through the trees. Emma, if you can hear me, call out. Silence. Then, faint, so faint she almost missed it, a sound, not quite a cry, more like a whimper. That way. Rieland was already moving, pushing through underbrush that tore at his clothes. Lena followed, her heart hammering so hard she could barely breathe. They found her 30 yards off the main path, wedged into a hollow beneath a fallen tree. Emma, her daughter, alive. Lena's knees nearly gave out. The child was filthy, covered in mud and leaves, her dress torn, her face streaked with dirt and dried tears. But her eyes were open, alert, and when she saw Lena, something fierce and defiant flashed across her features. I wasn't lost, Emma said immediately. Her voice was hoarse but steady. I was exploring. Relief and anger collided in Lena's chest. She closed the distance between them and pulled Emma into her arms, holding on too tight, not caring. You were missing for 15 hours, Lena said against her daughter's hair. 15 hours. Do you have any idea? I knew you'd find me. Emma pulled back, and there was something in her expression that made Lena's breath catch. A certainty, a confidence that didn't belong on a 5-year-old's face. Then Emma's gaze shifted past Lena and locked onto Rieland. The forest went very, very quiet. Lena had known this moment would come eventually, had rehearsed it in her head 1,000 times, planning how to explain, how to introduce them, how to make this feel natural and safe and controlled. But there was nothing natural about this. Emma stared at Rieland with the kind of intensity that suggested recognition on some level deeper than conscious thought, and Rieland stared back, his face absolutely unreadable. Who's that? Emma asked. Lena's mouth went dry. I'm Rieland. He stepped forward, moving slowly, the way you approach something wild that might bolt. I'm a friend of your mother's. You're tall. Emma tilted her head, studying him with unnerving focus. And you have the same eyes as me. Oh God. Lena saw the exact moment Rylan processed those words, saw the way his expression shifted from controlled neutrality to something raw and unguarded. Because Emma was right. They had the same eyes, that particular shade of gray-blue that was distinctive enough to be unmistakable, the same strong jaw, the same way of holding themselves like they were braced for a fight. Looking at them together was like seeing past and future collide in one heartbeat. We need to get her back, Lena said quickly, trying to break the moment. She needs food, water, medical attention. I'm fine, Emma protested. I drank from the stream and I found berries. You ate wild berries? Lena's voice went sharp with fear. Only the red ones. The book you showed me said red ones were usually safe. Usually isn't good enough. But I didn't get sick. That's not the point. Then what is the point? Emma's chin came up, stubborn. I did everything right. I found shelter. I stayed near water. I marked my trail with sticks like the soldiers do. Despite everything, pride flickered through Lena's chest. Her daughter. 5 years old and already thinking like a tactician. Rylan made a sound that might have been a laugh or a cough. When Lena looked at him, his expression was complicated. She's definitely yours, he said quietly. She's ours, Lena corrected before she could stop herself. The words hung there. Emma looked between them, something shifting in her small face. Are you my father? Rylan's breath caught. Lena wanted to lie, wanted to deflect, wanted to buy herself time to figure out how to handle this conversation properly. But Emma was looking at her now, and there was a question in those gray-blue eyes that deserved honesty. Yes, Lena said. He is. Emma absorbed this with the seriousness of someone much older. Then she turned back to Rylan. Okay, she said simply. That was it. No tears, no accusations, just acceptance. Rylan looked like he'd been hit. We should go, Lena said again, desperate to escape this moment, before it gets dark. The journey back was slower. Emma was exhausted despite her protests, and Rylan ended up carrying her most of the way. Lena watched them walk ahead of her, the warlord and the child, and tried not to think about how right they looked together. By the time they reached Westbrook Estate, it was early afternoon. Margaret met them at the gate with blankets and hot tea and enough fussing to make Emma squirm. I'm fine, the child insisted for the 10th time. Stop treating me like I'm made of glass. You scared 10 years off my life, Margaret shot back. I'll treat you however I please. While Margaret bustled Emma inside for a bath and proper food, Lena found herself alone in the courtyard with Rylan. The silence stretched. She's extraordinary, Rylan said finally. She's 5. She's a survivor. He turned to face her fully. You taught her that. I taught her to be careful. She clearly didn't listen. She listened to everything. His voice was soft. She just applied it in a way you didn't expect. That's not disobedience, that's innovation. Despite herself, Lena felt her mouth twitch. You sound like you're analyzing a military campaign. Aren't I? He moved closer. Except this time, the stakes are higher than any battlefield I've ever seen. Lena's chest tightened. Rylan, you kept her from me. Not angry, just factual. For 5 years, you kept my daughter from me. I was protecting her. From what? From me? From everything. The words burst out of her. From court politics and noble expectations and your mother's plans and all the ways this world destroys anything that doesn't fit into neat little boxes. So you decided to play judge and executioner on my behalf. I decided to give her a chance at a normal life. Living in hiding, with a mother who works herself to death and a groundskeeper as her only company? Rylan's voice hardened. That's not a life. That's a cage. It's better than what she would have faced in your world. My world. You mean the world where she'd have her father? Where she'd be acknowledged and protected and raised with every advantage? You mean the world where she'd be a scandal, a liability, something your family would try to hide or marry off the moment she became inconvenient? Rylan went very still. Is that what you think of me? That I'd treat my own child like a political problem? I think you're a duke with responsibilities that go beyond personal feelings. And I think you're a coward who ran instead of fighting. The accusation hit like a slap. Lena's hands clenched into fists. How dare you? You're brilliant, Lena. Fearless when it comes to strategy. You faced down generals twice your age and made them look like amateurs. But when it came to us, you ran. And you took my daughter with you. Because I loved you. The confession tore out of her. Because I loved you too much to watch you choose duty over me. Over us. I saw the way your mother looked at me. I knew what she wanted. And I couldn't be the reason you destroyed your future. You were my future. No, Lena's voice broke. No, I was a complication, a distraction, someone who didn't fit into the perfect life your family had planned. My family doesn't get to plan my life. They already did. She laughed bitterly. You're the warden of the frontier. You have power and influence and respect, everything you were supposed to have. Tell me that would have happened if you'd married a nobody tactician with no connections and a bastard child. The word felt like poison on her tongue. Ryland's expression went cold. Don't call her that. That's what they would have called her. You know it's true. I know, he said quietly, that I would have burned anyone who tried. They stared at each other across the courtyard. It's too late, Lena said finally. You can't change the past 5 years. No, but I can change what happens next. Alarm shot through her. What does that mean? It means, Ryland said, that I'm not leaving, not without both of you. You can't just... I can. I will. He moved closer, and there was something implacable in his expression. You kept her from me for 5 years. You don't get to keep her from me now. She's not a possession you can claim. She's my daughter, and you're... He stopped himself. I'm what? Lena demanded. Mine, he said simply. You were always mine. You just refused to believe it. Before Lena could respond, the cottage door opened. Emma stood there, cleaned up and dressed in fresh clothes, looking between them with eyes that were far too knowing. Are you fighting about me? She asked. No, Lena said. Yes, Ryland said at the same time. Emma sighed, a sound so adult it would have been funny under different circumstances. Adults are complicated. Very, Ryland agreed. Are you staying? Emma directed the question at him. He crouched down to her level. Would you like me to? Emma considered this with the seriousness of a military tribunal. Will you teach me things? What kind of things? Fighting, strategy, how to survive in the wilderness properly instead of just getting lucky. You weren't lucky, Ryland said. You were smart. But yes, I'll teach you. If your mother allows it. Both of them looked at Lena. She felt trapped, cornered by gray-blue eyes that were identical in their intensity. For a few days, she heard herself say. Then we'll discuss what happens next. Fair enough. Ryland stood, but something in his expression suggested this was far from over. That night, after Emma was asleep, Lena stood in the kitchen making tea she didn't want and trying not to think about the man currently occupying her sitting room. She'd sent Margaret home. The cook had left hours ago. It was just the three of them in the cottage, her, Ryland, and their daughter sleeping upstairs. A family. The thought terrified her. You're making that wrong. Ryland's voice came from the doorway. Lena didn't turn around. I know how to make tea. You're burning it. She looked down. He was right. The kettle was smoking. With a frustrated sound, she pulled it off the heat. Here. Ryland moved past her, taking over with the easy competence of someone who'd spent years in military camps where you learned to cook or starved. Sit down before you hurt yourself. I'm fine. Lena, sit. She sat. He worked in silence for a few minutes, then set a proper cup of tea in front of her. It smelled better than anything she'd made in weeks. Thank you, she said quietly. You're welcome. He sat across from her, cradling his own cup. She looks like you, he said after a long moment. In the face, but she has my stubbornness. She has both our stubborn streaks, which is going to be a problem in about 10 years. A ghost of a smile crossed his face. Probably. Silence settled again. I'm sorry, Lena said, for not telling you, for keeping her hidden, for all of it. I know. I thought I was doing the right thing. I know that too. He set his cup down. But Lena, you don't get to make these decisions alone anymore. I've been making them alone for 5 years. And now you're not. The finality in his voice made her chest tight. What are you proposing? She asked. Joint custody? Visits twice a year? A carefully managed schedule that doesn't disrupt either of our lives? I'm proposing, Ryland said quietly, that you both come north with me. Lena's heart stopped. To the marches. To my stronghold. He leaned forward. Where I can protect you. Where Emma can grow up without hiding. Where you can stop running. I have a job. A life. You have a desk job that doesn't use half your capabilities, and a cottage you visit 4 times a year. His eyes were steady on hers. That's not a life. That's existing. And what would I do in the north? Sit in a tower and look decorative. You do what you do best. Strategy, logistics. The frontier needs tactical minds like yours. Actually needs them, not just tolerates them for political appearances. It was tempting. More tempting than it should be. Your mother is going to have to deal with it. His voice went hard. She made her choices 6 years ago. Now I'm making mine. She'll fight you. Let her. He reached across the table, catching her hand before she could pull away. I'm not 19 anymore, Lena. I'm not some green noble trying to prove himself. I'm the warden of the frontier. What I say in my territory is law. And if I say you and Emma belong there, then that's the end of it. His hand was warm around hers. Solid. Real. This is insane, she whispered. Probably. It'll cause problems, political complications, your allies. We'll adapt or leave. He squeezed her hand gently. I've spent 6 years building power in the north. I didn't do it to waste it on people who think bloodlines matter more than capability. Lena looked at their joined hands. 5 years ago, she would have given anything to hear him say these things, to have him fight for her instead of accepting her departure. Now it felt like standing on the edge of a cliff with no idea what was at the bottom. I need time, she said. To think. To figure out. The door burst open. Margaret stood there, wild-eyed and breathing hard. Miss Whitmore, riders, coming from the south, at least a dozen, armed. Lena was on her feet instantly. Who? I don't know. But they're flying the Voss family banner. Reland's expression went cold and dangerous. My mother's men. How did she know you were here? Lena demanded. She always knows. He was already moving toward the door. Margaret, wake Emma. Get her dressed. Warm clothes. What's happening? Fear crept into the groundskeeper's voice. We're leaving, Ryland said. Now, before they arrive. They're already at the main road, Margaret protested. There's no way out without passing them. Ryland turned to Lena. The forest. Is there another path? Not one that's safe in the dark. Safer than staying here. He was right. Lena's mind raced through options, calculating routes and risks. There's an old hunting trail, she said, north side of the property. It's overgrown and dangerous, but it leads to the river crossing at Miller's Ford. From there we could... How long to reach it? On foot? 20 minutes if we move fast. Then we move fast. He looked at Margaret. Get Emma. Pack light. Only essentials. The groundskeeper ran. Lena grabbed Ryland's arm. Why is your mother sending armed men here? Because, he said grimly, she probably knows about Emma. And if she knows, she's not here to negotiate. What will she do? Whatever she thinks is necessary to protect the family reputation. His jaw tightened. Which means we need to be gone before she has the chance. 10 minutes later, they were running through the darkness with Emma between them, the child's small hand gripping Lena's with fierce determination. Behind them, torchlight flickered through the trees. And ahead, the wilderness waited to swallow them whole. The hunting trail was worse than Lena remembered. Branches clawed at their faces in the darkness. Roots twisted underfoot like traps designed by something malicious. Emma stumbled twice in the first 5 minutes, and each time Ryland caught her without breaking stride, lifting her bodily over obstacles that would have taken precious seconds to navigate. How much further? His voice was low, controlled, but Lena could hear the edge beneath it. 1/2 mile to the ridge, then down to the river. Behind them, the torchlight was getting closer. Voices carried through the trees, sharp commands, the jingle of equipment. Professional. Organized. Not a search party. A hunting party. Emma's breathing was coming hard now, her small legs struggling to keep the pace. Lena wanted to slow down, wanted to let the child rest, but the voices behind them were gaining ground. "I can carry her," she said. "I've got her." Relan adjusted his grip, settling Emma more securely against his shoulder. "You focus on the path." The ridge appeared without warning, a sudden drop where the forest floor simply ended. Below, barely visible in the moonlight, the river cut through a ravine like a silver scar. "There," Lena pointed to a narrow switchback trail carved into the ridge face. "It's steep, but it's the fastest way down." "That's not a trail," Relan said flatly. "That's a death sentence. It's what we have." He looked at her, then at the approaching torchlight, then back at the ridge. "How long since you used this?" 3 years, maybe 4. So it could be completely eroded. Possibly. And if it gives way, then we fall 60 feet into a river that's probably freezing and definitely full of rocks. Relan's laugh was sharp and humorless. "You always did have a gift for tactical assessment. Do you have a better option?" The voices behind them grew louder, closer. "Not even slightly." He shifted Emma again. "Stay behind me. If the path collapses, I want you far enough back that you don't go down with us." "Rylan, that wasn't a request." He started down. Lena followed, her heart in her throat. The path was worse than she'd feared. Sections had washed away completely, leaving gaps that required careful jumps. Other parts were so narrow they had to move sideways, backs pressed against the ridge face. Boots sending loose stones clattering into the darkness below. Emma was utterly silent through all of it. Lena couldn't tell if the child was terrified or simply too exhausted to speak, but either way, her small arms were locked around Rylan's neck with desperate strength. Halfway down, Lena's boot slipped. For one horrible moment, she was airborne. Nothing beneath her feet, gravity pulling her sideways toward empty space. Her hands scrabbled for purchase, finding nothing but crumbling dirt and loose rock. Then Rylan's hand shot out, catching her wrist. The sudden stop nearly dislocated her shoulder. She hung there, suspended over the drop, looking up into gray-blue eyes that were furious and terrified in equal measure. "Grab the root," he said through gritted teeth. "Left side, now." She twisted, found the gnarled root protruding from the ridge face, and hauled herself back onto the path. Her hands were shaking so badly she could barely grip the rock. "You good?" Relan asked. "Perfect." Her voice came out strangled. "Never better." Liar. They kept moving. The voices above them had stopped. For a moment, Lena dared to hope they'd lost the pursuit. Then torchlight spilled over the ridge edge. "There!" A woman's voice, sharp with authority. "On the trail!" Lena looked up. 6 figures stood at the ridge top, backlit by their torches. The lead figure was smaller than the others, wrapped in a traveling cloak that did nothing to diminish the aura of cold command radiating from her stance. Duchess Helena Voss, Rylan's mother. "Rylan!" Her voice carried down the ridge like a whip crack. "Stop this foolishness immediately." He didn't answer, didn't even slow down. "I know she's with you," Helena continued. "The woman and the child. You're making a mistake that will cost you everything you've built." "Keep moving," Rylan said to Lena, his voice barely audible. "Your position, your reputation, your future, all of it destroyed because you can't let go of a common tactician and her bastard? Don't." The single word from Rylan was so cold it could have frozen the river below. "Don't finish that sentence. I'm trying to save you from yourself. You're trying to control me, like you've been trying to control me for 6 years." Helena's laugh was bitter. "I raised you to lead, to command, to be worthy of the Voss name. And this is how you repay me? By throwing it all away for what? A moment of weakness you should have forgotten years ago?" They'd reached the bottom of the ridge. The river was louder here, rushing over rocks with enough force to drown out everything else. Relan set Emma down carefully, then turned to face the ridge top. "She's not a weakness," he called up. "She's the only thing I've ever done right. Even from 60 feet below, Lena could see Helena stiffen. That child is a complication, the Duchess said. A scandal waiting to destroy everything. You cannot possibly. She's my daughter. Ryland's voice rang with absolute finality. And if you want to take her from me, you'll have to come down here and try. Silence. Then Helena turned to the men beside her. Bring them up. Use force if necessary. Mother, Ryland's voice dropped to something dangerous. You really don't want to do this? I'm protecting the family. Someone has to. The family or your ambitions? They're the same thing. No, Ryland said quietly. They're not. And it's taken me 6 years to understand the difference. Helena gestured sharply to her men. 2 of them started down the trail. Lena's mind raced. The river was too fast to cross safely, especially with Emma. Going back up meant walking straight into armed soldiers, and the forest on this side of the river was even denser than what they'd just left. Options, Ryland said, his eyes still on the approaching men. Limited and bad. That's not helpful. I'm a tactician, not a miracle worker. Despite everything, his mouth twitched. Could have fooled me. The soldiers were halfway down now, moving with the careful precision of people who'd done this before. There's a smuggler's cave, Lena said suddenly, about a quarter mile upriver. It's hidden behind a waterfall. If we can reach it before they catch us. Can we? She looked at Emma, at the rough terrain ahead, at the soldiers descending. Maybe. Good enough. Ryland scooped Emma up again. Lead. They ran. The riverbank was treacherous, slick rocks, hidden roots, pools of standing water that looked shallow and weren't. Lena's boots were soaked through in minutes. Her lungs burned. Every breath felt like inhaling knives. Behind them, she could hear the soldiers shouting, coordinating their pursuit. There! She pointed ahead to where the river curved sharply, the water churning white over a sudden drop. The waterfall! It was smaller than she remembered, less impressive. The cave entrance was barely visible behind the cascade, just a dark gap in the rock that could easily be missed if you didn't know to look. They splashed through the shallows, the spray from the waterfall soaking them instantly. The cold was shocking, stealing breath and thought in equal measure. Ryland went first, Emma clutched against his chest. He disappeared behind the water, and for one terrible moment Lena thought the cave had collapsed, that she'd led them to a dead end. Then his hand emerged from behind the cascade, reaching back for her. She grabbed it, and he pulled her through. The cave was exactly as she remembered. Low ceiling, damp walls, the smell of moss and old stone. But it was dry and hidden and far enough back from the entrance that torchlight wouldn't penetrate. Emma was shivering violently. Lena pulled her close, trying to share body heat, while Ryland moved to the cave mouth to watch for pursuit. Will they find us? Emma's voice was small, muffled against Lena's shoulder. I don't know, sweetheart. That woman, the scary one, she's your grandmother. Lena's heart clenched. Yes. She doesn't like me. She doesn't know you. She called me a bad word. Anger spiked through Lena's chest, hot and sharp. She was wrong. You're perfect. You're everything. And anyone who says different is lying. Emma pulled back slightly, studying Lena's face in the dim light. You're shaking. I'm cold. You're scared. There was no point lying to a child who saw too much. Yes, Lena admitted. I'm scared. Of her? Of losing you. Emma thought about this. She can't take me if I don't let her. It doesn't work that way, sweetheart. Why not? Because she has power, money, soldiers, all the things that matter in this world. You have me, Emma said simply. And him. She pointed at Ryland's silhouette at the cave entrance. That matters more. The certainty in her voice made Lena want to cry. When did you get so wise? She whispered. I've always been wise. You just don't notice because you're busy being scared all the time. Ryland made a sound that might have been a cough or a laugh. She's right, you know. Not helping, Lena said. They're moving past. Ryland kept his voice low. Heading upriver. They think we kept going. How long until they realize we didn't? Hour, maybe less. Then they'll backtrack and search more carefully. So we have an hour. To do what? He turned to face her. We can't stay here forever. Eventually they'll find this cave or wait us out, and your friend Margaret can't lie forever about where we went. Margaret doesn't know about this place. Then they'll assume we drowned or got swept downstream, and they'll search the lower river. Either way, time's running out. He was right. Lena hated that he was right. We need to get word to someone, she said. Someone with authority who can... Who can what? Tell my mother to stop? Ryland's laugh was bitter. She's a duchess. She has authority. The crown doesn't interfere in noble family matters unless there's a compelling reason, and a dispute over an unacknowledged child isn't compelling enough. Then what do you suggest? He was quiet for a long moment. We go north, he said finally, to my territory, to the stronghold. Your mother will follow. Let her. In the marches, my word is law. She has influence, but I have power. There's a difference. She'll bring allies, pressure, political consequences, and I'll deal with them. He moved closer, crouching down so he was eye level with both of them. Lena, I know you're used to fighting battles alone, but you don't have to anymore. Trust me, please. The plea in his voice undid something in her chest. If we go north, she said carefully, if we walk into your stronghold with Emma, there's no going back. Your mother will know, everyone will know, and they'll use it against you. I'm counting on it. That surprised her. What? My mother's been waiting for me to make a mistake big enough that she can remove me from power, replace me with someone more manageable. His smile was sharp. Let her try. Let them all try. I've spent 6 years building loyalty in the North that goes deeper than bloodlines. When it comes down to it, my people will choose me over her, and then we'll see who has real power. It was a massive gamble, the kind of move that could either secure his position permanently or destroy him completely. You're insane, Lena said. Probably. This could ruin you. So could losing you again. The raw honesty in his voice made her throat tight. Emma looked between them with an expression far too knowing for a 5-year-old. Are you going to kiss again? Because last time you did that, everyone got really weird. Despite everything, Lena laughed. It came out half hysterical, but it was still a laugh. Not right now, sweetheart. Pity, Ryland murmured. I was looking forward to making everyone weird again. Focus, Lena said, but she couldn't quite keep the smile off her face. They stayed in the cave for another 20 minutes, waiting for the sounds of pursuit to fade completely. Then they emerged carefully, checking for signs of the soldiers. The riverbank was empty. They've moved on, Ryland said, probably searching downstream like I thought. How far to the nearest settlement? Miller's Ford is 5 miles north. Small place, but they have horses and supplies. Will they help us? If I ask them to, yes. The marches don't follow the same rules as the South. Power there is earned, not inherited. They started walking, following the river upstream. Emma had stopped shivering, but her eyes were heavy with exhaustion. Ryland carried her again without being asked. Dawn was breaking when they reached Miller's Ford. The settlement was exactly what Lena expected, a cluster of rough buildings built around a river crossing, populated by the kind of people who made their living in the spaces between civilization. Traders, trappers, people who asked few questions and expected the same courtesy. Ryland went straight to the largest building, a combination inn, tavern, and trading post. The man behind the counter looked up as they entered, his expression shifting from bored to alert in a heartbeat. Your Grace, he inclined his head respectfully. Wasn't expecting you. Emergency travel, Marcus. I need horses. 3. And supplies for a week-long journey north. Marcus's eyes flicked to Lena and Emma, taking in their disheveled appearance, the mud and river water, the exhaustion. Running from something? Towards something, Ryland corrected. Can you help or not? Can always help. Marcus pulled out a ledger. But word is there's a search party from the south, Duchess Voss's men. They came through here about an hour ago asking questions. Lena's stomach dropped. What kind of questions? Ryland's voice went very calm. About a woman and a child. Said they were in danger. Said the Duchess was trying to protect them from a kidnapper. And what did you tell them? Marcus met Ryland's eyes steadily. Told them I hadn't seen anyone matching that description. Told them to check the downstream settlements. Relief flooded through Lena. Thank you, Ryland said quietly. Don't thank me yet. They left 2 men here, watching the roads. If you're planning to travel north, you'll have to go around them. Can it be done? There's a back trail, rough going, but it connects to the north road about 10 miles out. I can get you started on it. Do it. While Marcus prepared the horses, Lena cleaned Emma up as best she could in the inn's washroom. The child was quiet, almost eerily so, her eyes tracking everything with sharp attention. Are we going to be okay? Emma asked as Lena combed tangles from her hair. Yes, Lena said with more confidence than she felt. Yes, we're going to be fine. That woman, my grandmother, she really doesn't want me to exist, does she? The blunt assessment made Lena's hands still. It's not about you, sweetheart. It's about control, power, things that have nothing to do with who you actually are. But if we go north with him, with Father, Emma stumbled slightly over the word, testing it out. If we go to his home, she'll follow. She'll try to take me away. She'll try, but she won't succeed. How do you know? Because, Lena said fiercely, I won't let her, and neither will your father. And between the 2 of us, we're a lot more dangerous than one angry duchess. Emma studied her reflection in the cracked mirror above the wash basin. I look like both of you. You do. That's going to make it hard for her to pretend I don't exist. Very hard. A smile flickered across Emma's face, quick and sharp, and so much like Ryland it made Lena's chest ache. Good. They left Miller's Ford an hour later, 3 horses loaded with supplies and a map to the back trail that Marcus promised would keep them clear of the Duchess's men. The trail was every bit as rough as advertised. It wound through dense forest, over rocky terrain that made the horses nervous, across streams that had no bridges and required careful navigation. But it was away from pursuit, away from soldiers and politics, and the suffocating weight of expectations. For the first time in days, Lena let herself breathe. They rode in silence for most of the morning. Emma dozed in the saddle in front of Lena, her small body relaxed in a way that suggested complete trust. It made Lena's throat tight. She's resilient, Ryland said, pulling his horse alongside Lena's. She's 5. She shouldn't have to be resilient. No, but she is anyway. He paused. Like her mother. Lena didn't answer. We're going to have to talk about this eventually, Ryland continued, about what happens when we reach the stronghold, what story we tell, how we handle my mother's inevitable attempts to undermine us. I know. You can't keep avoiding it. I'm not avoiding it. I'm prioritizing survival over politics. They're the same thing in the North. He was right. Again. Lena hated how often he was right. Fine, she said. What's your plan? We arrive together, all 3 of us. We present Emma as my daughter, acknowledged, legitimate in everything but name, and we make it clear that anyone who has a problem with that can take it up with me personally. That's not a plan. That's a declaration of war. Good. His smile was cold. I've been avoiding war with my mother for too long. Time to settle things permanently. And if you lose, I won't. Ryland, I won't, he repeated, and there was such absolute certainty in his voice that Lena almost believed him. Because I have something she doesn't. What's that? People who follow me because they choose to, not because they're bought or threatened or bound by tradition. Loyalty that's earned is stronger than loyalty that's demanded. My mother never understood that. They rode for another hour before Emma stirred, blinking awake with the suddenness of a child who'd been deeply asleep. Where are we? She asked. About halfway to the northern border, Lena said. How are you feeling? Hungry, and I need to pee. They stopped at a clearing beside a stream. While Emma attended to necessities behind a tree, Lena unpacked some of the food Marcus had provided. Dried meat, hard cheese, bread that was only slightly stale. This is an adventure, Emma announced, returning to settle on a fallen log. Like in the stories you tell me. Most adventures and stories end badly, Lena pointed out. Not the good ones. Ryland laughed. She's got you there. They ate quickly, aware that every moment of delay increased the chance of pursuit catching up. As they were packing up, Emma turned to Rylan with the directness that only children possessed. Are you really going to fight your mother for us? He crouched down to her level. Yes. Why? Because you're mine, both of you, and I protect what's mine. Even if it costs you everything? Even then. Emma studied him with those two sharp eyes. You mean it? I do. Okay. She nodded, apparently satisfied. Then I'll help. Help how? I'm very clever. Mother says so all the time, and I'm good at noticing things people try to hide. That's useful in fights, isn't it? Despite the situation, Ryland's expression softened. Very useful. Then we'll be fine. Emma said it with the absolute confidence of someone who'd never lost a battle because she'd never fought one. We have strategy and strength, and we're not running anymore. That means we win. It's not that simple, sweetheart, Lena started. Why not? Because the world doesn't work that way. Maybe it should, Emma said stubbornly. Maybe if more people just decided to win instead of worrying about losing, things would be different. Ryland caught Lena's eye over Emma's head, and something passed between them. Understanding. Recognition. The shared knowledge that their daughter was going to be absolutely impossible to control in about 10 years, and neither of them would want it any other way. They mounted up again and continued north. The border crossing came late afternoon, a marker stone half hidden by overgrowth, easily missed if you didn't know to look. But once they passed it, the landscape began to change. The trees grew denser, darker, the air got colder. Everything felt wilder, less managed, like civilization had given up trying to impose order and simply adapted to what the land demanded. Welcome to the marches, Ryland said. Lena had been here once before, 6 years ago. It had terrified her then, the rawness of it, the sense that everything was harder and sharper and more real than the carefully maintained South. Now it felt like relief. They made camp that night in a sheltered hollow that Ryland claimed he'd used before. He built a fire with efficient movements while Lena set up their sleeping arrangements, and Emma collected firewood with more enthusiasm than skill. It's colder here, Emma observed, huddling close to the flames. It's always colder in the north, Ryland said, but you get used to it. Will I live here now? The question hung in the air. Lena looked at Ryland. He looked back at her. Would you want to? Ryland asked carefully. Emma considered this with her usual seriousness. Will there be other children? Some. The stronghold has families, not many, but some. And I can learn things, fighting and strategy and survival? All of that. And Mother will be there too. If she chooses to be. Emma turned to Lena. Will you? Every eye was on her now. Lena thought about the cottage 3 days south, the desk job that didn't challenge her, the careful, small life she'd built that kept her safe but left her empty. Then she thought about Emma growing up in a place that valued capability over bloodlines, about working alongside Rylan again, the way they used to before politics and fear drove them apart, about finally stopping running. Yes, she heard herself say. Yes, I'll be there. Emma's smile was brilliant. Then that settled. If only it were that simple. They ate a cold dinner and settled in for the night. Emma fell asleep almost immediately, exhausted from the day's travel. Lena sat by the fire, staring into the flames and trying not to think about everything that could still go wrong. Second thoughts? Ryland's voice came from beside her. Constant thoughts. None of them particularly helpful. That's fair. What if she follows us all the way to the stronghold? What if she brings allies? What if... Lena. He waited until she looked at him. We'll handle it. You keep saying that. Because it's true. You can't know that. No, he admitted. But I can decide it anyway, and then make it true through sheer force of will. Despite everything, she smiled. That's the most arrogant thing I've ever heard. Welcome to the North. Arrogance is currency here. They sat in silence for a while, listening to the fire crackle and the forest breathe around them. I miss this, Raylan said quietly. Sitting with you, not having to perform or strategize or watch every word, just being. We can't go back, Lena said. Too much has changed. I know, but we can go forward. He turned to face her fully. And maybe that's better anyway. We're not the same people we were 6 years ago. No, we're not. You're harder, sharper, more dangerous than you used to be. So are you. Good. His smile was fierce. We're going to need it. Lena wanted to ask what he meant by that. Wanted to push for details, for plans, for concrete strategies she could analyze and improve. But exhaustion was pulling at her, making thought difficult. Get some sleep, Raylan said. I'll take first watch. Wake me in 4 hours. I will. She lay down next to Emma, pulling the child close for warmth. The last thing she saw before sleep claimed her was Ryland's silhouette against the firelight, solid and watchful and absolutely unwavering. She woke to shouting. Lena was on her feet before conscious thought caught up, hand reaching for a weapon she wasn't carrying. Beside her, Emma was sitting up, eyes wide with fear. Ryland was at the edge of their camp, facing a group of riders who'd surrounded them while they slept. 6 men, armed, wearing the Voss family colors. And at their center, still mounted, sat Duchess Helena Voss. Did you really think, the Duchess said, her voice cutting through the pre-dawn darkness like a blade, that I wouldn't follow you all the way to hell if necessary? Ryland's hand was on his sword hilt. This is my territory. You have no authority here. I have the authority of a mother protecting her son from catastrophic mistakes. I'm not your son when it's convenient for you, Mother. I'm the warden, and in the marches that means you're trespassing. Helena's laugh was cold. And what will you do? Kill your own mother? In front of your daughter? Her eyes found Emma, and something cruel flickered across her face. Hello, child. I'm your grandmother, whether anyone wants to acknowledge it or not. Emma didn't answer, didn't move, just stared at the Duchess with those unsettling gray-blue eyes. Leave, Raylan said quietly. Now, before this becomes something neither of us can take back. I'm taking that child, Helena said, one way or another. She's a threat to everything this family has built, and I won't let her destroy it. She's 5 years old. She's leverage, evidence of your poor judgment, a weapon that can be used against you by anyone who learns of her existence. Helena's voice turned sharp. I'm trying to protect you, you stubborn fool. If you keep her, acknowledge her, bring her into the light, you'll lose everything, your position, your allies, your future. Then I'll lose it. Ryland's voice was steel. But I'm keeping her. You're choosing a bastard child over your birthright? I'm choosing my daughter over your ambitions. The words hung in the air like a challenge. Helena's expression went cold and terrible. Then you leave me no choice. She gestured to her men. They drew weapons, and Lena realized with horrible clarity that the Duchess had come prepared to do whatever was necessary, including murder. The sound of steel leaving scabbards cut through the dawn air like a promise of violence. Lena's hand shot out, grabbing Emma and pulling the child behind her in one fluid motion. Her mind was already racing through possibilities, calculating angles and odds and the 1,000 ways this could end badly. 6 armed men against 1. No weapons except Ryland's sword. Rough terrain that favored defense but offered no escape routes. And a 5-year-old child who needed protecting. The math was brutal. Mother. Rayland's voice was remarkably calm for a man facing death. You don't want to do this, don't I? Helena remained mounted, looking down at them like a judge pronouncing sentence. You forced my hand, Ryland. I gave you opportunities to be reasonable, to send the woman away quietly, to let me handle the child with discretion, but you've chosen defiance at every turn. I've chosen my family. That woman is not your family. That child is not careful. The single word from Ryland carried enough ice to freeze the Duchess mid-sentence. You're about to say something you can't take back. Helena's jaw tightened. My men have orders. If you won't surrender the child peacefully, they'll take her by force. They can try. One of the soldiers shifted uncomfortably. Your Grace, this is the warden. If we draw blood here... I'm aware of who he is, Helena snapped. I'm also aware that he's making a mistake that will destroy the Voss name. Sometimes protection requires difficult choices. Difficult choices. Ryland's laugh was sharp. Is that what we're calling murder now? Don't be dramatic. No one needs to die. Just step aside and let my men collect the child. Not happening. The standoff stretched. Lena could feel Emma trembling against her back, could hear the child's breathing coming fast and shallow. She wanted to say something comforting, something that would make this less terrifying, but what comfort was there when armed men surrounded you in the wilderness? Then Emma spoke. I'm right here. Her voice was small but clear. You keep talking about me like I'm not standing 3 feet away. Everyone turned to stare at her. The child stepped out from behind Lena before anyone could stop her. She was still in the clothes she'd slept in, rumpled, mud-stained, her hair wild from the night's tossing. But she stood with her shoulders back and her chin up, meeting the Duchess's gaze without flinching. Emma, get back, Lena started. No. Emma didn't look away from Helena. She wants to talk about me? Fine. Let's talk. There's nothing to discuss with a child, Helena said dismissively. I'm the child you're trying to take away. I think that gives me something to say about it. One of the soldiers made a sound that might have been a suppressed laugh. Helena's glare silenced him immediately. You're too young to understand what's at stake, the Duchess said. I understand you don't want me to exist. Emma's voice was matter-of-fact. I understand you think I'm going to ruin everything. I understand you'd rather I disappeared forever than cause problems for your family. The brutal honesty made Helena's expression flicker. But here's what I don't understand, Emma continued. Why does one person get to decide if another person matters? Just because you have money and soldiers and a fancy title? It's not that simple. It is, though. Emma took a step forward. Lena's heart nearly stopped, but she forced herself to stay still. You're scared that people will think bad things about him. She pointed at Rylan. If they know about me. But maybe the bad things people should think are about you, for trying to make a child disappear because she's inconvenient. Silence fell over the clearing. Helena's face had gone pale. Whether from shock or fury, Lena couldn't tell. You dare, the Duchess began. I dare, Emma said simply. Because what's the worst you can do? Take me away from my parents? You were already planning that. Kill me? Then everyone would know what you did. You lose either way. Emma, Lena said urgently, that's enough. No, it's not. Emma's eyes were still locked on Helena. She needs to hear this. They all do. She gestured at the soldiers. You're following orders to kidnap a 5-year-old. How does that feel? Does it make you proud? Does it make you feel like heroes? 2 of the soldiers were definitely looking uncomfortable now. The child speaks boldly for someone in her position, Helena said, but her voice had lost some of its edge. I learned it from my mother, Emma said. She taught me that smart people use words before weapons, and that the truth is stronger than lies, even when the lies are more convenient. Rylan made a sound that was half laugh, half something else entirely. When Lena glanced at him, his eyes were suspiciously bright. Clever girl, he murmured. She gets that from both of us, Lena said quietly. Helena dismounted, her movement sharp with irritation. She approached Emma directly, and Lena tensed, ready to intervene if necessary. But the Duchess just stood there, studying the child with an expression that was impossible to read. You have his eyes, she said finally. I know. And her defiance. I know that too. Do you have any idea, Helena said, her voice dropping low, what it will cost him to acknowledge you? The alliances he'll lose, the enemies he'll gain, the constant questions about your legitimacy and his judgment? Yes, Emma said. I'm 5, not stupid. I know people will be mean. I know things will be hard, but he's still my father, and I'm still his daughter. And those things don't stop being true just because they're inconvenient for you. For a long moment, Helena just stared at her. Then she turned to Rylan. She's absolutely insufferable, the Duchess said. I know, Rylan replied, and there was something that might have been pride in his voice. She's going to cause you endless problems. I'm counting on it. Helena's expression shifted through several emotions too quickly to track. Finally, she settled on something that looked like resignation mixed with grudging respect. You're really going to do this, she said. Acknowledge her publicly. Bring her into the family. Damn the consequences. Yes. Even knowing it might cost you everything I've worked to build? Mother, Ryland's voice was gentle but firm. You didn't build my position, I did. With my own hands and my own choices and the loyalty of people who follow me because they choose to. Not because of the Voss name, not because of your machinations, because of who I am and what I've proven I can do. And if the Southern nobility turns against you, then I'll have learned who my real allies are. Helena closed her eyes briefly, and for the first time she looked old, tired. You're so much like your father, she said quietly. Stubborn, idealistic, convinced that will and determination can overcome politics and reality. He wasn't wrong. He died before he could prove it. The words landed like a physical blow. Lena saw Ryland flinch, saw the old pain surface in his expression. I know, he said, but I'm still here, and I'm still fighting, and I'm not going to stop just because it's hard or dangerous or politically inconvenient. Helena opened her eyes, and when she looked at him, something had changed. The cold calculation was still there, but underneath it was something else. Something almost like sorrow. Then you're a fool, she said, but the words lacked heat. Probably. And I can't stop you. No. She turned back to Emma, who had been watching this exchange with rapt attention. What's your name, child? Emma Whitmore. Not Voss? Emma glanced at Lena, then at Ryland. I don't know. I haven't decided yet. Despite everything, Helena's mouth twitched. Smart. Keep your options open. I plan to. The Duchess studied her for another long moment. Then, to everyone's surprise, she crouched down so she was eye level with Emma. If you're going to be part of this family, she said, you'll need to be stronger than you look. The North doesn't forgive weakness. I'm already stronger than I look, Emma said. People keep underestimating me because I'm small. It's their mistake, not mine. This time, Helena actually smiled. It was small and brief, but it was genuine. Perhaps you'll survive after all. She stood, turning to her men. Lower your weapons. We're leaving. Your Grace, one of them started. I said we're leaving. Her voice cracked like a whip. The warden has made his choice. We'll respect it. The soldiers hesitated, then sheathed their swords with visible relief. Helena walked back to her horse, then paused, looking over her shoulder at Ryland. When you reach the stronghold, she said, you'll find I've already sent word ahead, preparing them for your arrival. All three of you. Ryland's eyebrows rose. You knew I'd win this argument? No, I knew you'd fight it regardless of the cost. There's a difference. She mounted smoothly. And since you were going to be stubborn about it anyway, I decided to minimize the damage. How generous. Don't mistake pragmatism for generosity. But her voice was softer now. The Northern Lords will have questions, concerns. Some will try to use this against you. I've laid groundwork that should help, but you'll need to be prepared to defend your choices. I always am. Then I suppose we'll see if you're as capable as you believe. She gathered her reins. One more thing. More. Yes? Helena looked at Lena for the first time since dismounting. Her expression was complicated, assessment, resentment, and something that might have been understanding all mixed together. Take care of him, the Duchess said. He's brilliant and infuriating and completely impossible. But he's mine. And if you hurt him, title or no title, I will make you regret it. It wasn't a threat. It was a statement of fact. I don't plan to hurt him, Lena said quietly. No one ever does. It happens anyway. Helena's eyes were hard. You left once before. Don't do it again. I won't. We'll see. The Duchess turned her horse and rode out of the clearing without looking back. Her men followed, the sound of hoofbeats fading into the forest until only silence remained. Lena realized she was shaking. That, Emma said into the quiet, was the scariest thing I've ever seen. You just lectured a duchess, Ryland pointed out, to her face, in front of armed soldiers. I know. That's why it was scary. Emma's voice wobbled slightly. Can I be scared now? Now that it's over? Lena pulled her daughter into her arms, holding tight. You can be scared any time you want, sweetheart. You earned it. I thought she was going to have us all killed. So did I, Lena admitted. But she didn't. No, she didn't. Emma pulled back, looking up at Lena with those two knowing eyes. Why not? Because, Ryland said, moving closer to them, you convinced her. Your words, your courage. You showed her that you weren't just a problem to be solved. You were a person, a force, someone worth acknowledging. I just told the truth. Sometimes that's the bravest thing you can do. They stood there for a moment, the three of them together in the gray dawn light. Then Emma yawned hugely, exhaustion catching up to her now that the danger had passed. Can we eat breakfast? She asked. I'm starving. We can eat breakfast, Lena agreed. They broke camp quickly, aware that lingering would accomplish nothing. As they rode north again, Lena found herself processing what had just happened. Helena had backed down. Actually backed down. The woman who'd orchestrated Lena's departure 6 years ago had just acknowledged Emma's existence and by extension accepted the situation. It felt surreal. She'll still fight us, Ryland said, reading her thoughts with the accuracy that came from years of knowing each other. Just not with soldiers, with politics, alliances, careful manipulation of court opinion. I know, but it's progress. Is it? She could have taken Emma by force. She had the numbers, the justification, at least in her own mind, but she chose not to. He glanced over at Emma, who was riding between them, barely staying awake in the saddle. Because of her. Because our daughter looked a duchess in the eye and made her see reason. Pride bloomed in Lena's chest. She's extraordinary. She's ours. The possessive certainty in his voice made something warm unfold in Lena's core. They rode for 3 more days, pushing hard but stopping frequently to let Emma rest. The landscape grew progressively harsher, more rocks, less greenery, the kind of terrain that made you work for every mile. But there was beauty in it too. A stark, unforgiving beauty that didn't care about human preferences or comfort. The North, Lena was learning, didn't bend. You adapted or you broke. On the 4th day, they crested a ridge and saw the stronghold. It wasn't like the castles in the south, graceful towers and elegant architecture designed to impress visitors. This was pure function. Massive walls of dark stone built into the mountainside itself. Guard towers that commanded views for miles in every direction. Everything about it said one thing clearly: this place was built to endure. Home, Ryland said quietly. It's huge, Emma breathed, and scary. It's both, Ryland agreed, but it's also safe. Safer than anywhere else in the kingdom. They approached the main gate slowly. Lena could see guards watching from the walls, could feel the weight of their scrutiny. The gate opened before they reached it. A man stepped out, tall, scarred, wearing the practical armor of someone who actually fought rather than just looked impressive. His expression was neutral, but his eyes were sharp as he assessed the 3 riders. Warden, he said, inclining his head, welcome back. Commander Thorne. Ryland dismounted smoothly. I trust everything's been quiet in my absence? Quiet enough, though we did receive an interesting message from the south, something about preparing for guests. Thorne's gaze flicked to Lena and Emma. I assume these are the guests in question? They are. Ryland turned, reaching up to help Emma down from her horse. Commander Thorne, this is Lena Whitmore, and this is Emma, my daughter. The blunt introduction made Thorne's eyebrows rise, but to his credit, he recovered quickly. Miss Whitmore, Lady Emma. He bowed properly, treating Emma with the same respect he'd show any noble child. Welcome to Ironhearth Stronghold. Emma stared up at him with wide eyes. You're very tall. I've been told that. And you have scars. I've been told that too. Did you get them fighting? Emma, Lena said warningly. It's all right. Thorne actually smiled. Yes, Lady Emma, I got them fighting. Did you win? I'm still here, aren't I? Emma considered this logic and apparently found it sound. I suppose that's the best kind of winning. The only kind that matters in the North. Ryland cleared his throat. Is the council assembled? Thorne's expression sobered. They are. In the Great Hall. Your mother's message arrived 2 days ago. It caused discussion. I bet it did. Some of the lords are less than pleased about the situation. They'll adapt. And if they don't, then they'll leave. Ryland's voice was flat. I've been patient with political maneuvering, with subtle resistance and carefully worded objections. That patience has limits. Thorn nodded slowly. Understood. I'll have rooms prepared for Miss Whitmore and Lady Emma. Adjoining rooms, near mine. Your Grace, not a request, Commander. Of course. Thorn gestured toward the open gate. Shall I announce you? Give us an hour. Let them wait. Let them wonder, then we'll make our entrance. As Thorn strode away to carry out the orders, Lena turned to Rylan. What exactly are we walking into? She asked quietly. A room full of northern lords who think they have a say in how I run my territory. His smile was sharp. They're about to learn otherwise. Rylan, trust me. He caught her hand, squeezing gently. I've been preparing for this for 6 years. I know what I'm doing. Lena wanted to believe that, wanted to trust that he had everything under control. But she'd spent too many years in strategy rooms to think any plan was foolproof. An hour later, they stood outside the Great Hall doors. Lena had changed into the one decent dress she'd packed. Dark blue, practical, but well made enough to signal she wasn't some random peasant. Emma wore a clean dress that Ryland's housekeeper had found somewhere, her hair brushed smooth for the first time in days. Remember what we discussed, Ryland said to Emma. You don't have to say anything. Just stand with us. Be yourself. What if they're mean? Emma asked. Then we'll deal with it, together. What if they say I don't belong? Then I'll remind them that I decide who belongs in my stronghold, not them. Emma nodded, but her small hand found Lena's and gripped tight. The doors opened. The Great Hall was packed. At least 30 people, northern lords and their retinues, advisors, military commanders. All of them turned to stare as Ryland entered with Lena and Emma at his sides. The silence was deafening. Ryland walked to the head of the room where a large chair, not quite a throne but close, sat elevated above the rest. He didn't sit. Instead, he stood beside it, one hand resting casually on the armrest, and surveyed the assembled crowd with the kind of calm authority that came from absolute confidence. Thank you for gathering on short notice, he said. His voice carried effortlessly across the hall. I'm sure you all received the Duchess's message. I'm sure you have questions. So let me answer them clearly. He gestured to Lena and Emma. This is Lena Whitmore, tactician and strategist, and this is Emma, my daughter. They will be residing here permanently. They are under my protection. Anyone who has a problem with that can speak now. No one spoke, but Lena could feel the tension radiating from the crowd. The shock, the calculation, the judgment. One man finally stepped forward, older, gray-bearded, wearing the colors of House Garrett. Lena recognized him from reports. Lord Marcus Garrett, one of the more traditional northern nobles. Your Grace, he said carefully, no one questions your authority to house whoever you choose. But the child's status, her legitimacy, these are matters that affect more than just your household. They affect alliances, trade agreements, political standing. I'm aware. Then surely you understand our concern. The southern courts will use this against you, against all of us. Let them try. Royland's voice was ice. I've spent 6 years proving myself in the north, building loyalty that has nothing to do with bloodlines or political marriages. If the South wants to question my judgment, they're welcome to. It won't change anything. But Your Grace, Emma is my daughter, Ryland said, and the finality in his voice silenced the room. That's not a political position. It's not a negotiation, it's a fact. And anyone who treats her as anything less than family will answer to me personally. Lord Garrett's face reddened. You're risking everything for a child born outside. Careful, Ryland said softly. I told you to finish that sentence at your peril. The Lord fell silent. Another voice spoke up. A woman this time. Lady Torrin, if Lena remembered correctly. Younger than Garrett, sharper. What role will Miss Whitmore play here? She asked, beyond residing under your protection. She'll serve as my chief tactical advisor, Ryland said without hesitation. A position that's been vacant since I took leadership. Her expertise in strategy and logistics is unmatched. Anyone who's read the Southern Campaign reports knows that. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. A woman? Someone muttered. A brilliant woman, Rylan corrected coldly. Who's forgotten more about warfare than most of you have ever learned? If you want to challenge her credentials, I invite you to review her work. Then tell me if gender matters more than capability. The murmurs died down. Lady Torrin studied Lena with open curiosity. And the child? What's her status in the household? She's my daughter, Rylan repeated. She'll be raised as such, educated, trained, given every opportunity to prove herself. Even though she's mine, Rylan interrupted. That's all that matters in the North, isn't it? We don't care about Southern rules of succession. We care about strength, capability, the ability to survive in harsh conditions. He looked directly at Lady Torrin. My daughter spent 15 hours alone in the wilderness at age 5 and survived through intelligence and resourcefulness. How many of your children could claim the same? Torrin's expression shifted. That's impressive. It is, and it's exactly the kind of quality we value here. Rylan's gaze swept the room. So I'll say it once more, clearly. Emma is my daughter. Lena is under my protection and will serve as my advisor. Anyone who cannot accept that is free to leave my territory. I won't force loyalty, but I also won't tolerate disrespect toward my family. The word family hung in the air. Lena felt Emma's hand tighten around hers. For a long moment, no one moved. Then Commander Thorne stepped forward. He crossed to where Rylan stood and dropped to one knee. I serve the warden, he said clearly, and I welcome his family to Ironhearth. The gesture broke something in the room's tension. One by one, other figures began moving forward. Not all of them, but enough, kneeling, acknowledging, accepting. Lord Garrett remained standing, his face tight with disapproval. I cannot support this, he said. It's a mistake that will haunt you. Then leave, Rylan said simply. Garrett's eyes widened. You would dismiss me after years of service? I would dismiss anyone who puts politics above honor. You have until sunset to clear your belongings from the stronghold. The Duchess will hear of this. The Duchess already knows. Why do you think she sent the message ahead? She's accepted this situation. You should too. But Garrett was already leaving, his retinue scrambling to follow. The doors slammed behind them. In the silence that followed, Rylan finally sat down. He looked tired, but satisfied. Anyone else? He asked the remaining crowd. No one spoke. Good. He leaned back. Then let's talk about what happens next. Miss Whitmore will be reviewing our current defensive strategies starting tomorrow. I expect full cooperation. Commander Thorne, prepare a full briefing on northern border activity. Lady Torrin, I'll need updated trade route assessments by the end of the week. Just like that, they'd moved from confrontation to logistics. Just like that, it was over. As the crowd dispersed, murmuring among themselves, Lena finally allowed herself to breathe. They'd done it. Somehow, impossibly, they'd actually done it. Emma tugged on her hand. Can I sit down now? My feet hurt. Despite everything, Lena laughed. Yes, sweetheart, you can sit down. That night, after Emma had been settled into her new room, adjoining Lena's with a connecting door that the child insisted remain open, Lena found herself alone with Rylan for the first time since the confrontation. They stood on a balcony overlooking the stronghold, watching torches flicker in the darkness below. That went better than expected, Lena said finally. Did it? You only lost one lord. I was betting on at least 3. Rylan smiled faintly. Garrett was always going to leave. He never liked that I made commander based on merit rather than bloodline. This just gave him an excuse. And the others? Will fall in line or leave on their own. The North doesn't have patience for extended political drama. People adapt quickly or they don't survive. He turned to face her. Speaking of adaptation, are you all right? I'm not sure yet. Fair. This is all happening very fast. Would you prefer I slowed down? Made this more gradual? Gave you time to second-guess every decision? She thought about it. No, probably not. Good, because I'm terrible at gradual. Despite herself, Lena smiled. I remember. They stood in comfortable silence for a moment. Thank you, Lena said quietly, for fighting for us. for not letting your mother or the lords or anyone else dictate what happens. You don't need to thank me for choosing my family. I do, though, because I know what it cost you, what it might still cost. It cost me nothing, Ryland said firmly. Losing you 6 years ago cost me everything. Getting you back? That's profit. The raw honesty in his voice made her throat tight. I don't know how to do this, she admitted. How to be here. How to build a life that includes you and Emma and this place. I've spent so long alone that I've forgotten how to be part of something bigger. Then we'll figure it out together. He reached for her hand, lacing their fingers together. One day at a time. One crisis at a time, like we always did. We were younger then. Less complicated. We were idiots then, he corrected. Brilliant, stubborn idiots who thought we could solve everything through pure force of will. And now? Now we're brilliant, stubborn parents who know we can solve everything through pure force of will, plus better tactics. She laughed despite herself. From the doorway behind them, a small voice spoke. I can't sleep. They turned to find Emma standing there in her nightgown, looking small and uncertain in the unfamiliar space. Bad dreams? Lena asked. No dreams yet, just it's too quiet and too dark, and I keep thinking about all the people who don't want me here. Ryland crouched down to her level. Want to know a secret? Emma nodded. When I first came to this stronghold, I was terrified. I was 17, just inherited the position, surrounded by people who thought I was too young and too southern and too soft to survive. I spent the first 6 months certain they'd find a reason to throw me out. What changed? I stopped trying to make them accept me, and started proving I belonged through action instead of words. He tapped her nose gently. You've already done that. You stood up to a duchess. You survived the wilderness. You faced a room full of lords who questioned your right to exist. That's more than most adults accomplish in a lifetime. But some of them still don't like me. Some of them won't, ever. That's fine. You don't need everyone to like you. You just need the right people. He glanced at Lena. And we're definitely the right people. Emma studied him seriously. You really think I belong here? I know you do. How? Because you're mine. And everything that's mine belongs in the north. He stood, scooping her up. Now come on, let's get you back to bed. And if you can't sleep, we'll tell you stories about the stronghold until you're bored enough to pass out. What kind of stories? Terrible ones, full of bad tactical decisions and northern winters that tried to kill me. Those sound like good stories. They're absolutely not, but they're yours now. Lena followed them back inside, watching Ryland settle Emma into bed with a gentleness that contrasted sharply with the cold authority he'd displayed in the great hall. He was different here. More himself. The mask of political necessity had dropped, leaving only the man she'd fallen in love with 6 years ago, sharp and fierce and entirely devoted to the people he claimed as his. As they left Emma's room, Ryland caught Lena's hand again. Stay, he said quietly. Tonight. Just stay. I've spent 6 years sleeping alone. I'd like to stop. It wasn't a proposition. It was a plea. Lena thought about all the reasons she should say no, about maintaining propriety and setting examples and not moving too fast. Then she thought about Emma sleeping peacefully in the next room, about the stronghold that had accepted them despite everything, about the man standing in front of her who'd fought his own mother to keep them safe. Yes, she said, I'll stay. And for the first time in 6 years, Lena Whitmore stopped running. 3 months changed everything. The first week was chaos. Learning the stronghold's rhythms, meeting people whose names blurred together, navigating the unspoken rules of northern hierarchy. Emma adapted faster than Lena did, making friends with the kitchen staff and charming the blacksmith into teaching her about metallurgy. The child had no fear of this new world, which was both inspiring and terrifying. Lena threw herself into work. Ryland hadn't been exaggerating about the tactical division being vacant. The maps were outdated, the supply routes inefficient, and the defensive protocols written by someone who'd clearly never experienced an actual siege. She rewrote everything. By the end of the first month, she'd reorganized the entire northern defense structure. The commanders grumbled at first. Change always met resistance. But when her new rotation system cut guard fatigue by 40% and her supply restructuring freed up resources for better weapons, the grumbling turned to grudging respect. By the second month, they were asking her opinion on things that had nothing to do with tactics. By the third month, she realized she'd somehow become indispensable. It was a cold morning in late autumn when the real test came. Lena was in the war room reviewing reports from the eastern border when Commander Thorne burst through the door without knocking. "We have a situation," he said. She looked up. "What kind of situation?" "Raid, 20 miles east, small village. They're asking for help." Lena's mind immediately shifted into analysis mode. "How many raiders?" "Unknown, but they hit hard and fast, burned 3 buildings before anyone could react." "Fatalities?" "2 confirmed, more injured." She was already moving, grabbing her cloak. "Where's Rylan?" "Northern Patrol. Won't be back until tomorrow." Which meant the decision fell to her. Lena found herself at the gate 15 minutes later, facing an assembled group of soldiers waiting for orders. They looked at her expectantly, not with doubt or challenge, but with genuine readiness to follow her lead. When had that happened? "Commander Thorne, take 20 riders, fast response team. I want you there within 2 hours." Her voice was steady, authoritative. "Secure the village. Provide medical support. Track the raiders, but don't engage unless you have overwhelming advantage." "Understood." Thorne started barking orders. "And Thorne?" He paused. "Bring them back. All of them. No heroes, no unnecessary risks." Something flickered in his expression. Approval, maybe. "Yes, ma'am." They rode out in a thunder of hoofbeats. Lena watched them go, then turned to find Lady Torrin standing behind her. "You didn't hesitate," the older woman observed. "There wasn't time to hesitate." Most advisors would have waited for the warden's return, deferred the decision. Most advisors didn't spend 6 years making decisions no one else wanted to make. Lena met her gaze steadily. "And people are dying while we debate protocol." Torrin smiled. "You're more northern than you look." "I'm not sure that's a compliment." "In the north? It's the highest compliment there is." The raiders were caught before sunset. Thorne's team cornered them in a ravine, gave them one chance to surrender, and when they refused, ended the confrontation in under 10 minutes. No casualties on the stronghold's side. The village was secured, the wounded treated, and the raiders were brought back in chains for judgment. Rylan returned the next morning to find everything handled. He cornered Lena in her office, technically their office now, since they'd started sharing the space, and just looked at her for a long moment. "What?" she asked, suddenly self-conscious. "You took command." "Someone had to." "You made tactical decisions that could have started a conflict if you'd been wrong." "I wasn't wrong." "No," he agreed. "You weren't. Thorne said your response was textbook perfect. Fast, efficient, minimal risk." "So why do you look annoyed?" "I'm not annoyed." He moved closer. "I'm impressed. And slightly terrified that you're better at this than I am." Despite herself, Lena smiled. "I'm not better, just differently trained." "You're absolutely better, and everyone knows it." He sat on the edge of her desk. "The Northern Lords have been talking about you, about how you've reorganized half the stronghold in 3 months, about how you handled the raid situation without blinking." "Are they complaining?" "They're impressed, which is worse, because now I have to deal with people suggesting you should have a formal position beyond advisor." "Like what?" "Co-warden, strategic commander. One person suggested Northern Marshal, which I'm pretty sure they made up on the spot." Lena's stomach flipped. "That's ridiculous." "Is it?" His eyes were serious now. "You've proven yourself 10 times over. You've earned their respect through capability, not politics. That's exactly how power works in the North." "I don't want power." "You already have it. The question is whether you'll accept it formally." Before Lena could respond, Emma burst into the office. "Mother, father!" The child had taken to calling Rylan that naturally, without prompting. "Come quick! There's a woman at the gate demanding to see you, and she looks really angry." Rylan and Lena exchanged glances. "Description?" Rylan asked. "Old, fancy clothes, scary eyes." Emma paused. "She said she's your mother." Lena's blood ran cold. They found Duchess Helena in the Great Hall, looking like she'd ridden hard and was in no mood for delays. 3 retainers stood behind her, but no soldiers this time. Mother, Reland's voice was carefully neutral. This is unexpected. Is it? Helena's gaze swept the hall, taking in the changes Lena had implemented. New maps on the walls, updated duty rosters, the general sense of increased efficiency. I told you I'd be watching. And? And I have news. She pulled a sealed letter from her cloak. From the king. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. Ryland took the letter, broke the seal, and read silently. Lena watched his expression shift through several emotions before settling on something that looked like grim satisfaction. Well? Helena prompted. The king has heard about Emma. Ryland's voice was flat. Apparently news travels fast. What does he say? Lena asked, her heart hammering. He wants to meet her, officially, at court. Ryland looked up from the letter. And he's asking me to explain why I didn't inform him of her existence sooner. This is bad, Helena said. If he's questioning your judgment, let him question. Ryland set the letter down. I have nothing to hide. You kept a child's secret for 5 years. I didn't know about her for 5 years. There's a difference. Helena's gaze shifted to Lena, cold and assessing. Did you know this would happen? That hiding her would eventually blow up in all our faces? I knew, Lena said quietly, that nothing stays hidden forever. I was prepared to face consequences. Were you prepared for the king to potentially strip Ryland of his position, to use this as evidence of poor judgment and instability? Mother, Ryland's voice cut across the room like a blade. Enough. I'm trying to protect you. By making Lena feel like this is her fault? By suggesting that acknowledging my daughter was a mistake? He moved to stand beside Lena, a united front. We're past that. The king wants answers, he'll get them. Honestly and completely. And if he doesn't like them, then we'll deal with that too. Helena stared at him for a long moment. Then, surprisingly, her expression softened. You really have changed, she said. I grew up, finally. I can see that. She glanced at Lena again. And I can see why. It wasn't quite an apology, but it was something. When does the king want us? Ryland asked. 2 weeks, at the capital. Helena folded her hands. He's calling a formal assembly. Northern lords, southern nobility, everyone who matters. You'll have to present Emma publicly. Answer questions about her legitimacy, her future, her place in the line of succession. She's not in the line of succession, Ryland interrupted. The Voss holdings go to legitimate heirs, and I have no intention of marrying for political convenience just to satisfy protocol. Helena's eyebrow rose. Don't you? The implication hung in the air. Lena felt heat flood her face. They hadn't discussed marriage, hadn't even talked about what their relationship was beyond co-parents and partners in running the stronghold. Everything had been so focused on survival, improving themselves, that the future had seemed abstract. Now it was staring them in the face. We'll discuss it, Ryland said carefully, after we handle the king. See that you do. Helena moved toward the door, then paused. One more thing. I've been speaking with the northern lords, the ones who left after your announcement, and the ones who stayed. And they respect what you've built here, the efficiency, the loyalty, the way you've transformed this stronghold from a military outpost into something that actually functions. She looked directly at Lena. They give credit to Miss Whitmore for most of that. Some are calling her the best strategic mind in the kingdom. They're not wrong, Ryland said simply. No, they're not. Helena's expression was complicated. Which is why I'm withdrawing my objections. Formally, publicly. If anyone asks, I'll say I approve of your choices. All of them. Silence fell over the hall. Why? Lena asked, unable to help herself. Helena turned back to her. Because I was wrong. About you. About what you'd bring to this family. I thought you were a distraction, a weakness. But you've proven to be the opposite. She paused. My son is stronger with you than without you. That's all that matters. It was the closest thing to an apology Lena was likely to get. And somehow, it was enough. After Helena left, Lena found herself alone with Rylan in the war room. "That was unexpected," she said. "My mother doesn't do anything without calculation. She sees which way the wind is blowing and adjusts accordingly. Still, it's something." "It is." He moved closer. "But she was right about one thing. We need to discuss the future. What happens when we go to the capital? What story we tell? The truth? The truth makes Emma illegitimate, a political liability, something the Southern courts will use to undermine everything we've built." Lena's chest tightened. "Then what do you suggest?" "I suggest," Rylan said carefully, "that we change the narrative before anyone else can." "How?" He took both her hands in his. "Marry me." Lena's breath stopped. "Not for politics," he continued quickly. "Not for appearances. For us. For Emma. For the family we already are." His eyes were intense on hers. "I love you. I've loved you for 6 years. I never stopped. And I'm tired of pretending this is temporary or conditional or anything other than permanent. Rylan, I know it's fast. I know we've barely had 3 months to adjust. But the North doesn't wait for perfect timing, and neither do I." He squeezed her hands. "Say yes." Lena thought about all the reasons to say no, about her independence and her carefully built walls and her fear of losing herself in someone else's world. Then she thought about Emma sleeping safely down the hall, about the stronghold that had become home, about the man standing in front of her who'd fought his own mother and half the northern nobility to keep them together. "Yes," she heard herself say. "Yes, I'll marry you." His smile was brilliant and relieved and entirely unguarded. Then he kissed her, and for a moment the world narrowed to just this: 2 people who'd found each other twice and refused to let go again. When they finally pulled apart, Lena laughed breathlessly. "We should tell Emma." "We should." They found the child in her room, reading a book about northern wildlife that was definitely too advanced for a 5-year-old, but that she was tackling anyway with stubborn determination. "Emma," Lena said, sitting on the edge of the bed, "we need to talk to you about something." Emma looked up, immediately alert. "Is it bad?" "No, it's good. At least, we think it's good." Rylan crouched down beside the bed. "How would you feel about your mother and I getting married?" Emma blinked. "You mean you're not already married?" "No. Why would you think that?" "Because you act married. You argue about strategy. You share an office. You look at each other like the characters in Mother's romance novels." Lena felt her face heat. "You've been reading my romance novels?" "They were on the shelf. I got curious." Emma shrugged. "So when's the wedding?" "Soon," Rylan said, clearly fighting a smile. "Before we travel to the capital. We want to present ourselves as a complete family." "Will I get a fancy dress?" "The fanciest." "And will people stop calling me illegitimate?" The blunt question made both adults wince. "Yes," Lena said firmly. "Once we're married, you'll be legitimate in every way that matters. No one can question your place in this family." Emma thought about this seriously. "Okay then. You should get married." "Just like that?" Rylan asked. "Just like that. You're my parents. I want you to be official." She paused. "Can I go back to reading now? The chapter on winter wolves is really good." They left her to her book, both of them slightly dazed. "That went well," Rylan said. "She's taking this better than I am. She's 5. Everything is an adventure." "I hope she keeps that attitude." "She will. She's got your stubbornness and my refusal to quit. She's going to be unstoppable." They were married 3 days later. It wasn't the grand political wedding Helena probably would have preferred. It was small, held in the Stronghold's chapel, with only the core household present. Commander Thorne stood as witness. Lady Torrin provided a dress that actually fit, and Emma stood between them, holding a bouquet of northern flowers that the cook had somehow found in the depths of winter. The ceremony was brief, the vows simple, but when Rylan slipped a ring onto Lena's finger, silver, carved with northern patterns, and kissed her in front of everyone, she felt something shift inside her chest. This was real. This was forever. This was home. The celebration afterward was loud and chaotic, with the entire stronghold turning out to drink and dance and congratulate them. Lena found herself pulled into conversation after conversation, accepting well wishes from people who 3 months ago had been strangers. "You've won them over completely," Lady Torrin said, appearing at her elbow with a cup of wine. "I didn't think it was possible. Northerners don't warm to outsiders easily." "I'm not an outsider anymore," Lena said. "No, you're not." Torrin smiled. "You're one of us now, whether you meant to be or not." 2 weeks later, they traveled to the capital. The journey took 5 days, even pushing hard. Emma handled it better than expected, fascinated by every new landscape and settlement. She asked endless questions about geography and politics, and why southern horses were smaller than northern ones. Lena fielded most of them, grateful for the distraction from her growing anxiety about the meeting with the king. They arrived at the capital to find it buzzing with rumors. The Warden of the North had married in secret. He had a daughter no one knew about. The Duchess Voss had given her approval. The northern lords were rallying behind him. Speculation ran wild. The formal audience was scheduled for the day after their arrival. Lena dressed carefully that morning, deep blue, expensive but not ostentatious, with Emma in matching colors beside her. They looked like a unit, a family, exactly what they needed to project. The throne room was packed. Every noble who could manufacture an excuse to attend was there, along with advisors and courtiers and people whose entire purpose seemed to be watching other people. The weight of their collective scrutiny was suffocating. The king sat on his throne, older than Lena expected, with sharp eyes that missed nothing. "Lord Ryland Voss, Warden of the Northern Marches," the herald announced. "Lady Lena Voss, and the Lady Emma Voss." Lena's new name still felt strange in her mouth, but hearing Emma's name announced with full legitimacy made her throat tight with emotion. They approached the throne together, bowing at the appropriate distance. "Lord Ryland," the king's voice carried across the silent room. "We have heard interesting reports from the north." "I'm sure you have, Your Majesty." "A secret marriage, a child previously unknown, a complete reorganization of your household." The king's eyes were sharp. "Some might call that suspicious. And some might call it personal business that doesn't require royal approval," Ryland said calmly. "Unless I've missed a change in the law." A ripple of reaction went through the crowd. "You didn't speak to the king that directly, not without consequences." But the king's mouth twitched. "You always were bold, Ryland. Your father had the same quality. It got him killed." "My father died defending the northern border from raiders. There's no shame in that." "No, there isn't." The king's gaze shifted to Emma. "Come here, child." Emma looked at Lena, who nodded encouragingly. The child stepped forward with remarkable composure for someone so young. "What's your name?" the king asked. "Emma Voss, Your Majesty." "And how old are you?" 5.5. The half is important. Despite the tension, several people in the crowd smiled. "I'm sure it is." The king studied her with the same intensity he'd directed at Ryland. "Do you know why you're here?" "Because people are angry that I exist," Emma said simply. "And you have to decide if I'm a problem or not." The blunt honesty made the king's eyebrows rise. That's a very adult understanding of politics. "My mother teaches me strategy. Strategy is just politics with maps." This time the king actually laughed. "Your mother is correct." He looked up at Lena. "Lady Lena, we've heard impressive reports about your work in the north. The reorganization of the defensive structures, the improved efficiency. Some are calling you the finest strategic mind in the kingdom." "I'm just doing my job, Your Majesty." "Your job was advisor. What you've accomplished goes far beyond that." His eyes were knowing. "You've effectively become co-warden in all but name." Lena's heart hammered. This was the trap, the accusation waiting to spring. But before she could respond, a voice spoke from the side of the room. "If I may, Your Majesty." Duchess Helena stepped forward. She was dressed formally, every inch the powerful noble, and her expression was carefully neutral. "Speak," the king said. "I am the child's grandmother. I have observed the situation closely over the past months." Helena's voice carried across the throne room. "And I can state unequivocally that Lady Lena has brought nothing but strength to the northern territories." Her strategies have improved security. Her tactical innovations have reduced costs while increasing effectiveness. And her partnership with my son has created a stability in the marches that we haven't seen in decades. The admission clearly cost her, but she delivered it without hesitation. Furthermore, Helena continued, the child Emma is intelligent, capable, and already showing signs of the same strategic brilliance as her mother. To label her a scandal would be to waste potential that could serve this kingdom well in future years. Silence fell across the throne room. The king leaned back, studying them all with inscrutable expression. Lord Rylan, he said finally, you have built something unusual in the north, a household based on capability rather than bloodline, a partnership with a woman of common birth who has proven herself more valuable than half my noble-born advisors, and a daughter who speaks to me with more honesty than most adults dare. He paused, letting the tension build. This could be seen as dangerous, destabilizing, a challenge to traditional order. Lena's blood ran cold. Or, the king continued, it could be seen as exactly what the kingdom needs. Innovation, merit-based leadership, a demonstration that strength comes from choosing the right people, not just the right families. He stood, and the entire room held its breath. I choose to see it as the latter. His voice rang with authority. Lord Rylan Voss, your marriage is recognized. Your daughter is legitimate. And your wife is hereby granted the formal title of Northern Strategic Commander with full authority to act in matters of defense and military planning. The pronouncement hit like a thunderclap. Lena couldn't breathe. Furthermore, the king said, I expect regular reports on the Northern reorganization. I want those innovations implemented across other territories. Lady Lena, you'll serve as a consultant to the crown on strategic matters. Lena found her voice. Thank you, Your Majesty. Don't thank me. Prove I was right to trust you. His eyes were hard. Both of you. Show the kingdom that merit and capability matter more than tradition and bloodline. If you succeed, you'll change everything. If you fail, you'll be the example I use to warn against future experiments. We won't fail, Rylan said. See that you don't. The audience was over. They left the throne room in a daze, surrounded by murmurs and stares and the weight of sudden, overwhelming validation. Outside, in a private corridor, Lena finally let herself react. Did that just happen? It happened, Rylan confirmed. He looked slightly dazed himself. You're officially Northern Strategic Commander. I don't even know what that means. It means you have power. Real, formal, recognized power. It means every innovation you've implemented in the North now has the king's backing to spread across the kingdom. It means, Helena said, appearing beside them, that you've just become one of the most influential women in the realm, whether you wanted it or not. Lena looked at her former nemesis. You supported us, publicly. Why? Because I was wrong about you, Helena said simply. And because I'm not too proud to admit when I've been outmaneuvered by someone better at the game than I am. She smiled slightly. You've won, Lena, completely. You have my son, your daughter, a position of power, and the king's favor. That's more than most people achieve in a lifetime. I didn't want to win anything. I just wanted my family. Which is exactly why you deserve to win. Helena's expression softened. Take care of them. Both of them. They're more precious than any title or position. Then she swept away, leaving Lena staring after her in shock. Did your mother just give us her blessing? Lena asked. I think she did, Rylan said, sounding equally surprised. Emma tugged on Lena's skirt. Can we go home now? This place is boring. Despite everything, Lena laughed. Yes, sweetheart, we can go home. They left the capital the next morning, before anyone could delay them with politics or celebrations or the 1,000 obligations that came with their new status. The journey back to the stronghold felt different, lighter, like they were traveling towards something instead of running from it. Emma fell asleep in the saddle halfway through the second day. Rylan adjusted her carefully, keeping the child secure while they rode. She's going to be formidable when she grows up, he said quietly. Terrifying, Lena agreed. We've created a monster. Our monster. Our brilliant, unstoppable monster who will probably reshape the kingdom before she's 20. I'm counting on it. They rode in comfortable silence for a while. Do you regret it? Rylan asked eventually. The vow, that night at Ashford Court. If you'd known where it would lead, I'd do it again, Lena interrupted. Every decision, every risk, every terrifying moment, because it led here. To the middle of nowhere on a cold road heading north? To us. Together. With our daughter sleeping between us and a home waiting ahead. She met his eyes. That's worth every vow I ever made and a few I haven't made yet. His smile was brilliant. Good, because I plan to hold you to those vows for the rest of our lives. I'm counting on it. They reached the stronghold 3 days later to find the place transformed. Word of their success had traveled fast. Banners hung from the walls. The courtyard was decorated, and what looked like half the Northern Territory had turned out to welcome them home. Commander Thorne met them at the gate with a formal salute that turned into a genuine smile. Welcome back, my lord, my lady. He nodded to Emma. And welcome back, Lady Emma. Emma beamed. Did you miss me? The stronghold was far too quiet without you. They were swept into celebration, food and drink, and endless congratulations from people who genuinely seemed happy for them. Lena found herself passed from conversation to conversation, accepting praise she still didn't quite believe she deserved. But the looks she got weren't envious or resentful. They were proud. Somewhere in the past months, she'd stopped being an outsider and become one of them. Late that night, after Emma was finally asleep and the celebrations had died down, Lena stood on the balcony overlooking the stronghold. Rylan found her there, as she'd known he would. Thoughts? He asked, moving to stand beside her. I'm thinking about that night at Ashford Court, when I made that reckless vow. She leaned into him. I was so angry, so tired of being dismissed and underestimated. I wanted to prove I existed, that I mattered. You did. I proved more than I meant to. No. He turned her to face him. You proved exactly what you've always been. Brilliant, fierce, capable of changing everything when you decide to stop hiding. His hands were warm on her face. You were never going to stay small and quiet and safe. That's not who you are. I tried to be. For years I tried. And you were miserable. He kissed her forehead gently. Now you're not. Now you're exactly where you're supposed to be, doing exactly what you were meant to do. And our daughter gets to grow up seeing that, seeing you command rooms and reshape strategy and refuse to accept limitations. Lena's throat was tight with emotion. I love you. I know. You proved it by staying, by fighting, by choosing this life even when it was hard. He smiled. And I love you for all of it. The brilliance and the stubbornness and the way you reorganized my entire stronghold in 3 months without asking permission. Our stronghold, he agreed. They stood together in the cold northern air, looking out over the territory they'd built together, piece by piece, battle by battle, choice by choice. Inside, their daughter slept safely, dreaming of wolves and strategy and a future that was wide open. And Lena finally understood what home meant. Not a place, not a title, not safety or comfort or anything that could be given or taken away. Home was this, standing beside someone who'd fought for you, raising a child who'd never know what it meant to hide who she was, building something real and lasting and entirely their own in a world that had tried to tell them they didn't fit. Home was choosing to exist loudly, boldly, without apology. And Lena Voss, tactician, strategist, mother, wife, and Northern Strategic Commander, had finally stopped running long enough to claim it. 6 years ago, she'd walked away from Rylan believing it was the only option. 3 months ago, she'd kissed a stranger at a court gathering and set everything in motion. Now she stood at the edge of the North with her family beside her and her future stretching ahead like unmapped territory waiting to be conquered. The vow that shouldn't have existed had become the foundation of everything that mattered, and Lena wouldn't change a single word of it.